All right, so we're back here in a brand new studio, and today we're talking about a brand new direction for Bitcoin. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to Tech Path. As you guys know, we've been jumping all over the Tech Path set, moving our studios for the past few days. Maybe that's why you've missed us, but we are now in our new digs. And welcome to the new home of Tech Path and the Paul Barron Network. Many of our other shows that will be airing in this studio. We've got a brand new podcast studio, another studio in the house, and of course, a great control center right there behind the camera that's doing all the magic work behind everything that brings you this content each and every day. We're going to come to you hopefully more and more live here on the show and doing some very interesting things. One, the number one thing is a thing called the Diamond Circle. The Diamond Circle, you want to click the link below and join now because we're going to be dropping some money back to you, our subscribers, and our family here and help you guys move along in your crypto journey. Today's topic, though, is Bitcoin. Is it flying all the way to 100K? We had been predicting the 100K for all year, really looking at a late year run. It does look as though it's going to have its track to the 100K mark. Many people are still indicating that it could go beyond that. There are a lot of things that could happen to help drive that. But before we get started into all those angles, insights, and then some data, which we're going to reveal some very interesting trend data on the charts in TradingView that's going to be interesting. You want to stick around for that. Before we get going, let's jump over to CoinMarketCap quickly just to see where we are and holding at right now. Moving in on looks like $2.3 trillion in the market. Man, I haven't seen the 2.3 in so long. About to stutter this way through. 24-hour volume, 132 billion. And of course, Bitcoin dominance, this is another big story right here. Bitcoin dominance holding at 44%. Pretty big deal there in terms of Bitcoin, and where I think a lot of stalling of some of our altcoins have been is the movement over into Bitcoin. And there's some strategies that, whether you like them or not, that I have talked about many times here on the show, is that maybe you want to pull a little bit of that money out of Bitcoin. I know it's a little crazy. Don't get crazy. Don't hit me in the comments. But there's a lot of movement getting ready to happen in the altcoins when you start looking at the 2, 3, 5, 10x opportunities that are coming our way. Be on the lookout. We're going to have a lot of content coming up that's going to be pushing in that direction. The lineup here, of course, Bitcoin still holding at 54,218. And the 7-day, look at this 7-day number here at 25% up. ETH 20% up over the last week, holding in at 3,600. Just clicked over the 3,600 mark. Amazing there. And Cardano still very soft at the 229, though it is starting to show some movement there as the number 3 token on it. And of course, XRP again up again, 13% now at $1.07 trading. And then Solana, which has been a little bit sideways for its movement, but definitely up over the last week at 12%. So good stuff going in this direction. Of course, if you're a big investor, you're watching some of the big movers out there. I want to talk about some of those. You've got Wax coming in, Cream Finance, Stellar, we've seen some movement on. Phantom has got some movement. And of course, daily sentiment still holding at neutral, which was a little surprise to me because I felt like we'd probably see a little bit more of a pop. But it may actually be a little closer to even our own insights. And I'll tell you and explain to that why we think Bitcoin may be in a little bit of a slow move before we start to see an upward trend again. Let's jump over to some of the things that have been happening here recently in the news. One is U.S. regulation by enforcement approach. 2 unclear. Ripple Gemini exec panel. This was at the Token 2049 conference that in London that basically just said, listen, the U.S. is so far behind the rest of the world. And if you look at this one, Token 2049 was a conference headed up by Gemini. And the idea behind this was pretty simple, was trying to establish what the global stage was going to look like from a regulation and enforcement standpoint. And a lot of people that were at this conference basically were in the same alignment, is that we've seen so many good things happening around the world, but not necessarily in the U.S., even though recently we did have Gensler and also Chairman Powell, who have basically positioned saying we're not going to regulate or ban, I should say not regulate, but ban Bitcoin and or cryptocurrencies in general. That I think was a good move, but I think it's a scenario that we've seen with the United States being a little bit late to the party. And then, of course, Mary Beth Buchanan, who's the global chief officer at Merkle, basically agreed, said, arguing that the U.S. regulatory direction is still not clear, and it's one that has been a bit of a problem. And when you look over here in terms of whether people are establishing this as a commodity, I think we've come a long way, or a bit in the past in the U.S., still don't have a clear regulation of other parts of the world that essentially have said, hey, we've been able to isolate what's happening in the cryptocurrency and been able to provide our constituents a direction, which is what the SEC has been struggling with. And I think also when you look at it, the amount of things that the SEC is doing, remember the SEC is supposed to be out there protecting investors. I don't necessarily see them protecting retail investors because the amount of scams and problems that we've seen in traditional asset classes, stock, real estate, you name it, that we've seen over the years. The SEC is a bazooka that's shooting at big game. They're going after the big boys, and then they're jumping into this space where you have basically a pile of hornets. And we've talked about this before. It's a pile of hornets that are constantly innovating and moving so fast. I'm just not sure the SEC is going to be able to handle the kind of regulatory requirement, which is why I think a lot of people have put hands off, let the market develop, and then put the guardrails in place to kind of get it going. And I think that is one of the reasons we have started to see movement in Bitcoin's price. Also, Robinhood's rival, Public, is now planning to add crypto, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge, etc. So you've got now with the situation with Public, which is another platform like Robinhood, very similar. But the point behind this story is that we've got a lot of activity in the traditional trading houses and exchange centers for derivatives that are moving into the crypto space in a much more aggressive fashion. With that being the case, do expect more investors coming in, which is where we're going to see those money flows. And if you're following what's happening in the money flow, you're following what's happening in the sentiment and the amplification layers, you know what direction that's trending for Bitcoin. I want to jump to my ETH chart just to get a quick look on how it's been holding based on our predictions. Again, we predicted, this was back in September 17th. We ran our last sentiment bubble right there through September 21st, which had dropped in sentiment at 63.09, and that was where the amplification had flipped. And if you watched one of our videos previously, you saw us present this very chart. The difference is all of this purple was uncharted, meaning the coin had not moved into this space yet. So our track was dead on where ETH was moving. We pulled out a little bit right here with this little dip right here on September 29th, but it pulled right into position to where we think it's going to go. We've now extended that out from data that we continue to pull from Rever Labs, which is essentially our proprietary data and analytics tool that helps us with sentiment and amplification, which gives us a chart on ETH on the high upwards of around 51.86 within the next 10 days. That's on the high. The low, we're looking at right around 41.37. So of course, ETH is trading right now at $3,600, just clipped over. So we are definitely in the zone, unless, of course, as you guys all know, we do these market movers from time to time. The idea behind market movers are straightforward. We give you this data, we drop in a little bit of news and analysis, but it's not investment advice. The best thing you can do is get out there and do your own research, get into these tools that we've provided to you here on the channel. And of course, if you jump over to the Diamond Circle, you can get access to a lot of member offers that's going to help you get to that. Remember, it's free. Diamond Circle is free. Jump into the link below. All right, so what you've been waiting for. All right, Paul, enough with this. Let's go to Bitcoin, find out what's happening and where it's going. This is our map of Bitcoin all the way back to August the 11th, which is when we pulled our first downward trend that we wanted to measure, which gave us kind of a moderate sentiment number. We started to see the movement, which happened in August 23rd. We saw some additional movement right here. Even though it was a very sharp decline, the sentiment amplification started to level out, which meant that we were going to see some sideways chop. And right there is where the sideways chop did occur. We pulled another sentiment bubble right here. And this one was, of course, pulled in on the 19th of September. Looking good. And then our last sentiment bubble right here, which was the one that predicted this movement that we're seeing right now. Remember, Amplification, when it overrides sentiment, it flips. It tells us something big is about to happen. This occurred on September 27th and right here at the bottom on September 29th before we saw the bump on September 29th that started to move Bitcoin out of the 40s and in on its way to the 50s, which was right here up the track, still staying almost right along our upward trend of where amplification was performing, with exception, of course, this little spot right here, which again, this is what you guys got to watch out for. I want to point this one out very closely. That is whale manipulation to its finest. And we talked about this many times, is when you see this kind of jump between where we were at the 51 to this little jump right here at the 54, this is where I'm concerned about whale manipulation. And I know it's happening. We're checking blockchain data direct, as well as mapping that against what we're seeing here on our own sentiment and amplification tools. And this opens up basically coming back into the zone of where we think Bitcoin will be, even at the current pace. Around October 20th through this trend, you're still looking at a 57,000. Can this hold on that upper line, or will it come down into this zone right here, which would be our low at toward October 29th, around 57. The high towards the 29th is around 63,000, 62.7. That's kind of where we're seeing this coming. But remember, this right here, that could either be one, a market correction on the rise through some of the data that we're looking at, or it could be simply a correction that might offer an opportunity for you guys to buy in on the dip. So I want you to watch this very closely. We are going to be keeping up with a lot of these data and analysis tools much faster and really picking up the pace here in the new studio. We've got a lot more capability here in terms of blowing out content for you, getting into you much more quickly and more live and ongoing, and of course, doing some cool things on the Diamond Circle. So if you guys have some ideas, you want some tokens analyzed, we've got our team at your will, basically. We are also flying in a big way here on YouTube. Thank you so much for the 100K. We have blasted past the 100K and moving in now to the 120 mark, which is where we want to go hopefully we're going to hit that in maybe the next 10 days. We're moving so fast now, and it's all because of you, our viewers. So you have some ideas, drop them in the comments below. You want to hit me up direct, do it on Twitter at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.